the second to last week of classes. I wanted to encourage you all and congratulate you all for making it this far. Many of you have shown great potential and great success this semester, and I really look forward to continuing our process together as we move into next semester. I had the opportunity to look at most of you or a lot of your interviews over the break. I'll be completing that grading here really shortly, and you all did a very good job. I really wanted to let you know that my expectation for that was really about having an experience to practice your interviewing skills, and I wanted to also acknowledge how awkward it can feel to be videoed and for it to be kind of a contrived experience. So you all did really well, and I wanted to acknowledge that. This week we're going to continue on looking at modes of intervention in social work practice. We're covering several different modes of intervention, but I wanted to take the time to go into a little bit more depth about solution-focused intervention. And solution-focused intervention is a short-term approach to intervention in which a social worker and the client attend to solutions or exceptions to problems more so than the problems themselves. So often, in any form of intervention, whether it's in social work or in medicine or other forms of other types of helping professions, we often approach it from a problems-focused perspective, or I shouldn't say that's often the way that problems or issues are addressed. But the solution-focused intervention is really a process of helping clients to identify and to amplify their strengths and resources in order to change their lives and to move towards goals of finding solution to the presenting issues in their life. So the basic approach of solution-focused intervention, there's two primary activities: the development of a well-formed goals within the client's frame of reference and the development of solution-based exceptions. And I'll go more into depth about what that solution-based exceptions are and give you some example questions of that. So the basic framework and process of the solution-focused intervention is to first describe the problem. Next is to develop goals, then to explore for exceptions. Then as you end your process with the client to provide time for feedback, and then with each time that you're going to be spending with the client, then you would evaluate the progress towards that solution. So often the goals of the first time that you would be meeting with someone would be to, as always, that rapport building process of building positive feelings and a sense of hope. So maybe you would ask something like, tell me what will be different for you when our time here has been successful. So you're really coming at it from a very positive place. Assessment topics can be things like the client's perception of the problem, the client's belief about the sources of the problem, how the problem affects the client, how the client has coped with the problem thus far, what the client has already tried, and what the client's experiences have been with other helpers. And that's a really important piece in terms of exploring with somebody that you're working with. Have they ever sought help for this before? Or have they ever sought help for other issues in their life? And what has their experience been with helpers? And again, this is another area where it's really important to look at it through a cultural lens, because that can also impact your work together and a client's perception of what a helper is or what a social worker is to them. So let's go into a little bit of depth around the idea of the exception question. So the exception question would be these are some examples. So you could ask something like, well, what was going on in the past when the problem wasn't a problem? So you're really looking at exceptions to whatever the presenting issue is. You might ask something like, tell me about a time recently when the problem didn't exist or was less troublesome? Another example is, how did you make the exception process happen? So maybe for somebody who was struggling with substance abuse and they said, well, I actually, was able to go 3 days without drinking. And you might ask that, so what was different about that? How did you make that happen? Another example of these questions are, what were you thinking? Who was there? How did they have a part in creating the exception? When did it happen? Where did it happen? And what did you think and feel as a result of doing that? So solution-focused intervention through the helping process. Here's the social worker's general approach is to give compliments, direct and indirect compliments, to ask future-oriented open questions, so that the worker's language should always, and again, this is also coming from a strengths perspective, you're always going to imply the likelihood of change, and your emphasis is really on the future when the problem or issue no longer exists. So you would ask a question like, well, what would you be doing when this was no longer an issue in your life? What would your life look like? Another kind of tactic within that is to take the pessimistic stance, and it kind of engages the client to argue for their own change. So you might ask a question like, it sounds like the problem is serious. How come things are not worse? Or you might say something like, what are you or your family doing to keep things from getting worse? I know often these would be kind of questions that I would use when I was doing interventions with families and children in the child welfare process. And so you could ask something like, so what do you plan on doing to make things not get worse than what they are right now? So more in terms of this approach continued. Another tactic is the use of reframing. So you might introduce a client to new ways of looking at themselves or the issues. This is a skill that often social workers use and is a really important skill to kind of reframe what is going on with people. The other example is to externalize. So you would discuss the issue as something apart from the client. So again, using the example of substance abuse, you would say something like, so you struggle with substance abuse versus you are a substance abuser. Clarifying the client's goals for intervention, you're going to encourage a clear problem definition. So really getting down to, so what is happening here? And then you're going to prioritize the work that you're doing one at a time. A really kind of powerful tool within this framework is the use of what we call the miracle question. And an example of that would be, so imagine when you go to sleep one night and a miracle happens, but you don't know it. What would be the first sign for you that whatever had changed? So maybe again, with using substance abuse as the identified issue, if you woke up one day and you were no longer struggling with that, what would that look like? And it really, you can use this with children, you can use it with the kind of focused client or the person that you're focusing on, you can use it with their significant other or other family members, and you can really get an idea of what concretely, how life would look different. And then that information really helps you to partialize those issues into kind of what we could call discrete and measurable units. I think it's really, though, important to kind of look at some of the criticisms of solution-focused intervention. These are also happen to be some of the criticisms of the strengths perspective as well. And that the criticisms are really around the idea that possibly this practice might deny the client the opportunity to explore presenting problems in greater depth, because really you're coming at it from a very positive solution place, and that it doesn't really lend itself to having the opportunity to really look at it, kind of in more depth and kind of tear it apart. It encourages clients to think positively, and some people criticize that, coming at it always from that positive perspective can also induce denial or minimization of the problems. And I've definitely heard that as a criticism of using it as a technique in substance abuse or use. And that the other criticism is that clients may feel discouraged from sharing important details or negative feelings about the presenting issue because you, as kind of the facilitator of this process, are really, again, coming at it from a very positive stance and helping them to look at things in a solutions-based way and in a positive way. And they might feel less inclined or less safe maybe to explore some of their more difficult feelings around whatever the presenting issue is. So that just gives you a little bit more in depth about solution-focused intervention. Again, as always, please feel free to contact me with any questions or concerns. And I look forward to reading about all your dialogue this week in the forums.